Dozens met on Ohio State's campus for the Brian Shaffer March for the Missing, named in honor of Shaffer, an Ohio State medical student who disappeared during a night out with friends 12 years ago. Lori Davis is a friend of the family.
Unfortunately, there have not been leads that have led to anything in Brian's case. I think that people might be afraid to talk, and I think that after 12 years they need to buck up and they need to start speaking.
Hello friends, welcome to the third episode of our Land of the Lost series. In this video, we'll be discussing the disappearance of Brian Shaffer. Please make sure you share the links in the description box and share this video so we can help Brian's family spread awareness. Let's begin. March 31st, 2006 started off just as hoped for 27-year-old Brian Randall Shaffer. Spring break had officially begun and finals had concluded. As a second-year medical student at The Ohio State University, he was ready to unwind. Aside from the normal pressure of medical school, Brian's stress was overwhelming compared to most. He had suffered great loss in the weeks preceding that night. His mother, Renee, was a nurse who both encouraged and inspired her oldest son to pursue medicine. She was not able to see him fulfill this goal, however, as she was taken by myelodysplasia on March 6, 2006. She was only 51 years old. Brian was broken. So broken, in fact, that he was unable to bring himself to attend her funeral in a timely manner. One of Renee's final wishes was for her son to complete his degree. She also hoped he would get married and start a family. She was eager for her son to find happiness, and she hoped that he would propose to his girlfriend, Alexis Wagner. In perhaps an effort to nudge him in that direction, her Christmas gift to Brian and Alexis included a trip for two to Miami. He and Alexis were to leave on Monday, April 3rd for a week-long trip. They were never to live that experience, however. On Friday, March 31st, Brian officially started his break by having dinner at the Outback Steakhouse in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, with his father, Randy. Brian's friends wanted him to join them for drinks earlier in the evening, but Brian insisted he spend some time with his father. They were both in the midst of grief over losing the matriarch of the family. Brian's father reported that he seemed mainly concerned about his father's well-being. Brian was a bit tired, but otherwise well. Such fatigue would be unsurprising, of course, given everything he had endured that month. He needed respite. He deserved a night to forget all his troubles. After dinner with his father, Brian returned to his apartment to prepare for a night of revelry. Around 9 p.m., he joined his friend, Clint Florence, with the intention of bar hopping. They met up at the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a bar that has since been closed. The Ugly Tuna was within a few blocks of Brian's apartment, so it made sense to begin the evening there. Within the hour, Brian took a moment to speak on the phone to his girlfriend, Alexis. She had driven up to Toledo for the weekend. She wished to spend a few days with her parents before she and Brian jetted off to Miami together. Friends and family had suggested to the couple that perhaps Miami would be the perfect location for a proposal. Alexis, certain that Brian was the love of her life, was eager to take such a trip with him. Their call was brief, and he made sure to emphasize his love for her before saying goodbye. Unfortunately, this was the last time that Alexis heard Brian's voice. Brian and Clint decided to continue their evening by moving on to several other bars before they met up with a young woman named Meredith Reed. She was a friend of Clint's and, given their condition, offered to give them a ride. They accepted, and together the three of them returned to the Ugly Tuna Saloona. Brian and his friends arrived at the bar around 1:15 a.m. on Saturday, April 1st. Surveillance cameras timestamped the trio's arrival as they ascended the escalator to the second-story bar. 40 minutes later, Brian was seen again on surveillance, standing near the top of the escalator, speaking with two young women. After a few moments, Brian says goodbye and appears to re-enter the Ugly Tuna. He is never seen on camera again. Clint and Meredith left around 2 a.m., unable to find Brian in person or able to get him to answer his cell phone. Sunday evening, a few hours prior to their scheduled flight to Miami, Alexis was more than concerned. She had not been able to contact her boyfriend over the weekend, and she knew something was wrong. Out of an abundance of caution, she contacted Brian's father and brother to let them know of her worries. They met her that evening at Brian's apartment. He was nowhere to be found, so they began searching the immediate area. By the time the police were informed of the situation, nearly 2 days had passed. Surveillance footage was reviewed from the Ugly Tuna as well as other local areas that were on his route that evening. After his last appearance at 1:55 a.m., he was never seen again on camera. All possible exits from the bar were covered by cameras, so it is unknown how he left without being caught on video. There was only one exit out of the building that was not actively being monitored, but it was on the first floor. It was also a service exit that led directly to a construction site. According to Sergeant John Hurst, who was the lead supervisor of the Missing Persons Department at the time, leaving through the service exit would have been extremely difficult. He said that there would be no reason for anyone to want to leave that way. It would have been a difficult task, even sober, and Brian had been drinking heavily that evening. When it became clear that something was truly amiss, word of Brian's disappearance spread rapidly. His picture and description were widely circulated across the OSU campus and the surrounding areas, as well as on various social media platforms. Brian is athletic in appearance. He's a Caucasian male, standing 6 foot 2 inches and weighing between 160 and 170 pounds. He has brown hair and hazel eyes. His left iris has a distinctive black dot on it. He has a tattoo on his upper right bicep. It is of the Stickman logo that was on the cover art of Pearl Jam's single Alive. He was last seen wearing an olive-colored short-sleeved shirt with a white long-sleeved shirt underneath. He was wearing blue jeans, a yellow cancer awareness bracelet, and Adidas tennis shoes. Brian had a dream of someday becoming a rock star, as evidenced by his Stickman tattoo. Brian greatly admired the band Pearl Jam. When Brian vanished, news spread quickly across the band's fan message boards, with a thread being created titled, "Columbus Area Pearl Jam Fan Gone Missing." The community rallied around the family, as did the band themselves, with Pearl Jam frontman Eddie Vedder speaking multiple times about Brian's disappearance. On June 24, 2006, during a concert in Cincinnati, Eddie took a moment to ask for any information about Brian, declaring that Brian is one of us and we miss him here tonight. Hopefully we can have a happy ending to this. Eddie then stated, "We're going to play this one for Brian," before heading into Wish List, altering the lyrics in places, begging Brian to come on home. There is love waiting at home. Brian's story has not been forgotten by the band over the years. In 2010, Eddie reminded the crowd in Columbus about Brian's disappearance before dedicating the song "Come Back" to Brian. Since his disappearance, there have been glimmers of hope, albeit just a few and only briefly. For example, Brian's apartment was broken into a few weeks after his disappearance. This could have been a major step forward in the case, but police determined it was simply a random crime and nothing more. A few months later, Alexis called Brian's phone just as she had done every night since she last heard his voice. Day after day of only getting his voicemail, in September his phone finally rang. No one answered, but they were able to ping the phone's location to Hilliard, Ohio. This, according to the cell phone company, was nothing more than a glitch. Brian's phone was never turned on again, and his credit cards were never used. Theories have abounded as to what happened to Brian that night. Perhaps he was too overwhelmed with the state of his life and simply left. Maybe he was attacked on his walk home. He was inebriated after all, and that location of town was known for its crime. Maybe his body is still within the building somewhere, or maybe it was in the construction area, later covered with concrete. Some have suggested that Clint knows exactly what happened, as he refused to undergo a polygraph test. And, according to Brian's younger brother, Derek, the two didn't always get along. Clint has stated he told the police all he knew. Therefore, he claimed, there was no need to undergo any sort of lie detector test. Police have not been able to rule out much of anything with such a lack of evidence in this case. Brian's father, Randy, and his girlfriend, Alexis, did everything they could to keep Brian's name and image in the media. Randy exhausted all means of searching, including scouring the Olentangy River at the suggestion of a psychic. Randy dedicated the remainder of his life to finding his son and helping other families who were missing loved ones. Randy, unfortunately, died when struck by a falling limb during a storm in 2008. He never found any successful leads on the whereabouts of his eldest son. The sole remaining immediate family member of Brian's is his younger brother, Derek. Alexis has begun a new life. Clint Florence has moved out of state. Lori Davis, a friend of the families who took up particular interest in Brian's case, has dedicated countless hours of her life to finding not only Brian, but also every other missing person in Ohio. Life moves on, but Brian, of course, will never be forgotten. Unfortunately, despite tips still being sent in fairly regularly throughout the years, we are no closer to answering the question, what happened to Brian Shaffer? If you or anyone you know has any information about the disappearance of Brian Shaffer, born February 11th, 1979, please call 1-877-645-TIPS or 877-645-8477. You can remain anonymous if you wish. Well, friends, thank you for tuning in to episode 3 of our Land of the Lost series. Please remember that we're asking everyone who watches this video to please share it on social media and with friends and family. Brian is still missing, and you just might know the person who holds the key to solving this case. Until we meet again, take care of yourselves and each other. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk to you next time.